In a world where words can cloak sinister motives and smiles can mask manipulation, how well do you really know the intentions of those around you? This book isn't merely a communication guide. It is a compelling journey into the depths of dark psychology, a realm where exploitation lurks beneath the surface, and emotional strength becomes your greatest weapon. Prepare to unearth the subtle strategies that enable psychological control and learn how to navigate your interactions with keen awareness. With this book, you will empower yourself to recognize and dismantle deceptive tactics, reclaiming your autonomy along the way. Hidden Intentions: Spotting Machiavellian Manipulation Tactics, written and published by Stealth Psychology. Chapter 1. Enter the Mind of a Machiavellian. Imagine a friend who has always seemed supportive, sharing your interests and encouraging your dreams. Over time, you begin to notice subtle shifts in their behavior. They dismiss your achievements as mere luck, sowing seeds of doubt in your mind whenever you express excitement about your endeavors. Their calm demeanor contrasts sharply with the rising tension they create. This friend manipulates conversations to keep you uncertain, dependent, and ultimately isolated, all while maintaining an image of loyalty and compassion. You're drawn into a web where their smiles are disarming, their critiques are masked as concern, and your sense of self-worth begins to erode. This scenario highlights a common yet insidious objective of psychological manipulators: the ultimate goal of emotional control. Often, those trapped in such manipulative dynamics fail to recognize the full extent of their entrapment until significant damage has been done. The manipulator, skilled in the arts of deception, employs calculated tactics to ensure their victims remain oblivious to the manipulation. This kind of psychological exploitation may not always be as overt as blatant lies or aggressive behavior. It often masquerades as friendship, affection, or mentorship, making it even harder for the victim to identify the manipulation at play. Victims often convince themselves that the manipulator has their best interests at heart. They might rationalize the manipulator's backhanded compliments and subtle jabs as mere clumsiness in communication. The more these gaslighting techniques are repeated, the more the victim begins to question their perception of reality. Self-doubt creeps in, resulting in a paralyzing dependence on the manipulator's approval. Bit by bit, the victim's independence is siphoned away, leaving behind a distorted self-image shaped by someone else's narrative. Psychological manipulators often have a deep understanding of human emotions, allowing them to prey on vulnerabilities with precision. Their techniques might include guilt induction, where they make the victim feel responsible for their emotional pain, or love bombing, where they overwhelm the victim with attention only to later withdraw it, creating confusion and longing. Each tactic is carefully deployed to sow discord in the victim's mind while strengthening the manipulator's hold. This intricate dance of control is rarely understood by those ensnared in it. They often believe that if they could just please the manipulator, harmony would be restored. As we delve deeper into the mind of the Machiavellian, it becomes essential to recognize these tactics not just as isolated behaviors, but as parts of a larger strategy aimed at ensuring compliance and subservience. It is critical to accept that this manipulation extends beyond the mere desire to control. It can involve financial exploitation, social isolation, and the stripping away of personal agency. Once you begin to perceive these patterns in your interactions, the world around you shifts. You start to empower yourself with the knowledge of how manipulation operates, equipping you to dismantle the hold these tactics have over you. Armed with this understanding, you can begin your journey to reclaim your sense of self and autonomy in your relationships, learning to spot deception and defend against it. As you continue to explore this unsettling but necessary territory, you will uncover not only the methods of the manipulators, but also the ways to fortify your emotional resilience, ensuring that your mind remains your own. The emotional toll of psychological manipulation can be profound, significantly impacting decision-making, relationships, and self-esteem. Victims often find themselves oscillating between self-doubt and a desperate need for validation. When a manipulator sows confusion and insecurity, the victim's emotions can become chaotic. Research indicates that individuals subjected to emotional manipulation often experience anxiety and depression as they grapple with a distorted sense of reality. For example, a study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that emotional abuse can lead to long-term impairment in self-regulation, making it hard for victims to make sound decisions. They may second-guess their choices, favoring the manipulator's opinions over their instincts, perpetuating a cycle of dependence. Consider the case of Mary, who entered a relationship with someone charming and attentive. Initially, her partner's compliments felt like fuel for her self-esteem. However, over time, he started to undermine her confidence subtly, dismissing her ideas during discussions and suggesting that her successes were mere coincidences. Mary, who once thrived in her career, began to make decisions based on what she believed would appease him, rather than what she genuinely desired. This emotional volatility extended to her friendships, where she withdrew from meaningful connections, fearing judgment and needing to safeguard her relationship. As a result, Mary became increasingly isolated, perpetuating her partner's goal of emotional control. The dynamics of psychological manipulation not only affect individuals, but also ripple through their relationships, leaving devastation in their wake. Individuals often underestimate the power of social networks and the detrimental impacts that one toxic relationship can have on their social fabric. Research shows that relationships characterized by manipulation erode trust and communication, essential elements of any healthy interaction. When one becomes accustomed to manipulation, they might even start to internalize such practices, leading them to replicate the behavior in other relationships. This is known as the cycle of abuse, where victims unconsciously become perpetrators, perpetuating patterns of behavior that promote further manipulation. But why do people fall victim to these tactics? The answer lies in the human desire for connection and acceptance. Many individuals are vulnerable, yearning for approval and love, and manipulators exploit these desires to build their influence. There is often an element of charm or charisma in Machiavellian personalities, making them seem trustworthy and appealing at first glance. Psychological research reveals that these individuals are adept at reading emotions and adjusting their approach to resonate with their targets. Their skills in emotional intelligence allow them to weave narratives that appeal to the victim's insecurities, drawing them further into a deceptive web. As we continue to explore the nuances of Machiavellian manipulation, it becomes evident that the emotional, relational, and psychological damage is immense and multifaceted. Victims often emerge from these experiences feeling drained and defeated, struggling to reclaim their identity in a world that previously felt familiar. The urgency to recognize and confront these patterns becomes paramount to avoid entrapment in emotional chaos. In the upcoming sections, we will delve into the hidden warning signs that most people overlook. Awareness of these signs will empower you to safeguard your emotional well-being, equipping you with the tools needed to navigate the treacherous waters of psychological manipulation. Psychological manipulators are astute in identifying their targets, often choosing individuals who display certain vulnerabilities, such as low self-esteem, a strong desire for acceptance, or a tendency to trust others easily. This intuitive selection can occur in various environments, whether it's a workplace, a friend group, or even within familial relationships. The manipulator will often observe potential victims, analyzing their interactions, fears, and emotional responses to develop a tailored strategy that maximizes their control. Consider the case of David, a young professional eager to prove himself. When he started a new job, a senior colleague took an immediate interest in his work. At first, David felt flattered by the attention and guidance, believing this mentor had his best interests at heart. Gradually, however, the mentor began to impose unrealistic expectations on him and criticized his every effort, slowly eroding his confidence. Manipulators may employ tactics that seem supportive in their initial stages, such as offering guidance or assistance. However, these behaviors are layered with ulterior motives. As the manipulation deepens, the target may begin to perceive slight shifts in the power dynamic, often characterized by a growing imbalance. These psychological shifts can be subtle, yet profound. Victims might find themselves relieving stress through constant comparisons to the manipulator's standards or altering their behavior to garner approval. In David's case, he started isolating himself from other colleagues, fearing their differences would expose him as incapable. This withdrawal is a classic sign of manipulation, one that often leaves the victim feeling more dependent on the very person who is undermining them. Another illustrative scenario is found in the case of Rachel, who was drawn into a friendship with someone who initially seemed charismatic and insightful. This friend often volunteered to assist Rachel with personal projects, highlighting her weakness in organization. Gradually, Rachel began to rely heavily on this friend, whose incessant reminders of Rachel's shortcomings transformed into control over her decisions. The friend would frame their input as critical for Rachel's success, subtly leading her to doubt her abilities. As Rachel began to accept these manipulations as truth, she experienced emotional fatigue, where her self-worth heavily depended on her friend's assessments. The manipulative tactics employed in these situations often manifest through a gradual process designed to normalize control. Subtle reminders of dependency replace independent thought, leading victims to internalize the belief that they require guidance or support to succeed. As this dependence grows, psychological shifts become increasingly entrenched. Victims may experience heightened anxiety at the prospect of independent decision-making, fearing the backlash or disappointment from the manipulator. Understanding how manipulators identify and strategically target their victims is a critical step in self-defense. By recognizing the patterns employed in these interactions, individuals can better navigate relationships, avoiding emotional entrapment. Awareness of these tactics lays the groundwork for resisting manipulation, empowering individuals to reclaim their agency. The knowledge gleaned from these insights is invaluable in allowing victims to analyze their experiences critically and seek the paths to emotional autonomy. The next section will explore the troubling escalation of control and how the cycle of manipulation ensnares victims, trapping them in emotionally damaging dynamics. Breaking free from dark psychological tactics requires a resolute approach, grounded in self-awareness and clarity. The first step is to cultivate a habit of trusting your instincts and honoring your emotional responses. When you find yourself feeling uneasy, anxious, or manipulated, take a moment to pause and reflect. These feelings are often indicators of deeply embedded tactics at play. By acknowledging those instincts, you begin to strip away the layers of doubt and confusion that the manipulator has worked to instill. Creating a dedicated space for reflection, whether through journaling, meditation, or simply quiet contemplation, can significantly enhance this process. This conscious effort to regain clarity is essential, as it undermines the manipulator's control, which thrives in uncertainty. A practical counter-strategy involves establishing clear boundaries. Boundaries serve as a protective shield, delineating acceptable behavior from exploitation. Start by identifying what makes you feel uncomfortable or manipulated in your current relationships. Communicate these feelings assertively, ensuring that the manipulator understands that their behavior is intolerable. Realize that a healthy relationship is predicated on respect and reciprocity. Any sign of emotional or psychological exploitation must be addressed head-on. For instance, if a colleague constantly undermines your contributions, articulate your feelings firmly, stating that their comments are disrespectful and negatively impact your work environment. By vocalizing your boundaries, you reaffirm your self-worth and diminish the power that the manipulator holds over you. Engaging in this process of boundary setting can be daunting, especially for those conditioned to seek approval. However, confidence often grows alongside assertiveness. As you reclaim your voice, you'll likely find a burgeoning resolve within yourself, a realization that you deserve relationships marked by empathy and respect. This empowerment allows you to disengage from those who thrive on manipulation, freeing you to form healthier connections and rediscover your true self. Understanding that manipulation relies on disorientation can further aid in your liberation. The more you regain clarity about your feelings and experiences, the more you empower yourself. Once you articulate your boundaries and confront exploitative behavior, prepare for a reaction from the manipulator. They may resort to tactics such as gaslighting or feigned disappointment, attempting to regain control and dissuade you from asserting your truth. It's crucial to remain anchored in your commitment to self-respect and clarity. The manipulator's discomfort is a sign that you are on the right path toward liberation. As you build the strength to resist manipulation, remember that this knowledge transforms your perspective. Familiarity with these tactics will equip you to navigate challenging situations with confidence, ensuring you will never allow yourself to be controlled in the same way again. In the following chapter, we will delve into the telltale signs of escalating control and explore how victims become entrenched in cycles of manipulation. Prepare to deepen your understanding of this complex psychological landscape and prepare to empower yourself in ways you never thought possible. As we move forward, consider sharing your own experiences or insights with our community at Stealth Psychology. We value your thoughts, so don't hesitate to like this content, comment below with your suggestions, and subscribe for more empowering discussions. Together, we will cultivate a space of awareness and strength, breaking the shackles of manipulation one insight at a time. Chapter 2: The Power of Subtle Influence. Picture a recent graduate stepping into the corporate world, excited and eager to make a mark. She quickly finds herself working under a charismatic boss who seems genuinely interested in her growth. During meetings, he praises her ideas, fostering a sense of belonging and validation. However, as time passes, subtle shifts in this dynamic begin to emerge. This boss expertly redirects her contributions, claiming credit for her innovative suggestions and showering her with praise only when it serves his agenda. Gradually, the graduate realizes that her confidence is dwindling and her independence is eroding, as her boss becomes increasingly possessive of her work. This scenario exemplifies a manipulation tactic aimed at emotional control. The ultimate goal of such psychological manipulation is often ensnaring the victim in a cycle of dependency while fostering compliance. The manipulator appears supportive and nurturing, encouraging the victim to rely on them for guidance. Yet, beneath this facade lies a carefully constructed strategy designed to maintain influence. Victims in such situations frequently fail to recognize the full extent of their entrapment until it is far too late. They often attribute their feelings of self-doubt and anxiety to personal shortcomings, rather than acknowledging the machinations at play in their relationships. This intricate dance of influence evolves over time, becoming almost imperceptible. The charismatic boss might initially amplify the graduate's strengths, creating a positive reinforcement loop. However, as he begins to assert control, his tactics shift subtly. He might dismiss her contributions in casual conversation, planting seeds of doubt. It is often these understated remarks that compound, leaving the victim questioning their capabilities. The most alarming aspect of this manipulation is its stealth. Victims often dismiss their discomfort, believing that it is simply a byproduct of working in a challenging environment. Research indicates that individuals caught in such dynamic often experience a profound psychological toll. A study published in the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology highlights how workplace manipulation can lead to burnout and emotional exhaustion. The longer a victim remains ensnared, the more deeply rooted their habits of reliance become, reinforcing the manipulator's position of power. The graduate, who was once vibrant and self-assured, may find herself second-guessing decisions and seeking constant approval from her boss, whose behavior has transformed from supportive to controlling. In addition, social isolation often becomes a byproduct of this subtle influence. As the manipulator strengthens their grip, they may begin to unintentionally alienate the victim from their support network. Friendships and family bonds may weaken as the victim becomes increasingly engrossed in the manipulator's narrative. The graduate might withdraw from social interactions, feeling too drained to engage meaningfully with friends or family, unaware that this isolation is part of the tactic to reinforce compliance. Uncovering the hidden truth behind such manipulation requires vigilance and introspection. As victims begin to recognize the subtle shifts in their emotional landscape, they can acknowledge that their experiences are not mere coincidences, but rather manifestations of a larger pattern of control. The realization that emotional influence can be wielded deceptively empowers individuals to question their relationships critically. In doing so, they take the crucial first steps toward breaking free from the bonds of psychological manipulation that threaten their autonomy. The impact of subtle influence on emotions, decision-making, relationships, and self-esteem can be profound, often producing a cascade of internal conflict and distress. Individuals ensnared in manipulative dynamics frequently find themselves embroiled in a cycle of self-doubt, unable to trust their judgment as their confidence erodes. This gradual depletion of self-worth can lead to anxiety and even depression, as victims grapple with the disparity between their previous sense of agency and their current state of compliance. Take the example of Alex, an aspiring artist whose talent drew the admiration of a fellow artist who became a mentor. Initially, the guidance felt uplifting. Alex believed he was honing his skills under a seasoned professional. However, as time passed, the mentor began to dominate creative decisions, asserting ownership over Alex's artistic direction. With every unsolicited critique, Alex's self-esteem suffered, leading to hesitance in showcasing his work or pursuing new opportunities. Consequently, he became increasingly reliant on the mentor's approval, abandoning his original vision in a bid for validation. Psychological research supports this narrative. Studies have shown that people exposed to continual criticism often exhibit diminished self-efficacy, undermining their capacity to make independent, confident choices. Furthermore, subtle influence exerts an insidious effect on interpersonal relationships. Individuals caught in these dynamics may withdraw from friends and family, believing their manipulator's narrative that they are unworthy of support, or that their loved ones don't understand their struggles. This isolation not only exacerbates the emotional pain, but also entrenches the manipulator's power, as the victim becomes increasingly dependent on a fractured relationship for emotional support. Once vibrant connections fade as the victim believes they cannot lean on anyone else, creating a tenuous existence tethered solely to the manipulator. Why do individuals fall prey to such tactics, despite their damaging effects? It often stems from a deeply human yearning for acceptance and validation. In the start, manipulators cast a captivating image that draws people in, presenting themselves as people who care deeply about their well-being. Initial interactions may be marked by charm and encouragement, creating a false sense of security. Over time, however, past affection morphs into a form of codependence. Victims may rationalize and ignore red flags, convinced that they must sacrifice their own needs to maintain approval. Research suggests that the phenomenon known as cognitive dissonance plays a crucial role in this process. As individuals experience a disconnect between their beliefs and behaviors influenced by the manipulators, they may alter their perspectives, further entrenching themselves in the dynamic. Understanding these psychological patterns is essential. It is imperative to recognize that the gradual erosion of trust in one's judgment often accompanies psychological manipulation. Empowerment comes through awareness. Identifying these norms, attitudes, and behaviors allows individuals to navigate their relationships with clarity and resolve. As this chapter elaborates on the subtle intricacies of psychological influence, it becomes clear that the ability to discern these tactics is crucial for self-preservation. The following sections will reveal the hidden warning signs that often go overlooked, enabling readers to detect the early manifestations of manipulation before they become ensnared. Recognizing these signals not only fosters awareness, but also lays the groundwork for regaining control over one's emotional landscape. Understanding that psychological manipulation can be subtle, yet impactful, is the first step toward breaking free and reclaiming individual agency. Manipulators are often skilled at identifying their targets, honing in on individuals who exhibit vulnerabilities such as low self-esteem, a hunger for validation, or a propensity for trust. These predators assess their surroundings, watching for signs of emotional fragility or desire for acceptance, which allows them to tailor their tactics for maximum effectiveness. The initial stages of manipulation typically involve flattery or kindness, and alluring camouflage designed to disarm the victim while establishing a rapport. Once this foundational trust is in place, the manipulator's subtle influence begins to unfold. Consider the case of Jenna, a new employee at a marketing firm. A senior colleague, who appeared warm and supportive, quickly took Jenna under her wing. Initially, this mentorship felt authentic. Over time, however, the colleague began making small, seemingly innocuous comments that undermined Jenna's confidence. "Are you sure this is the direction you want to go? Or you might want to revise that before the client sees it," became common refrains in their interactions. Each remark, sewn into Jenna's work life, instilled a shadow of doubt that left her second-guessing her capabilities. What seemed like friendly advice slowly morphed into a controlling narrative that shaped Jenna's professional decisions. Psychological shifts during manipulation manifest gradually but can be devastating in cumulative effect. As Jenna internalized her colleagues' critiques, her self-doubt grew. She started to feel incapable and questioned her expertise in marketing. This psychological erosion began to spill over into her personal life. Friends began to notice her reluctance to engage in conversations about her work and contribute to group projects. Jenna withdrew, isolating herself while inadvertently feeding the manipulator's agenda. The power dynamic shifted, with Jenna becoming increasingly reliant on her colleagues' approval, further opening the door for compliance. The case of Jenna exemplifies how manipulative tactics unfold in common scenarios, particularly within professional environments. It underscores how an individual may appear benevolent while deliberately and subtly exerting influence over another's emotional landscape. Victims must recognize that their emotional responses, such as lingering doubts or a feeling of confusion, are often signs of this influence at work. The manipulator's careful orchestration fosters an environment where invalidation replaces self-assurance, altering the victim's perception of their competencies. Understanding the unraveling nature of these dynamics is vital for self-defense against manipulation. Awareness equips individuals with the necessary insight to spot the early signs of exploitation. By identifying behaviors and patterns characteristic of manipulative individuals, victims can begin to take strategic steps to reclaim their autonomy. As we proceed further into this exploration of subtle influence, it will become even clearer why many individuals fall prey to these tactics and how early recognition can serve as a protective measure. Knowledge of these strategies is not merely academic, it forms the bedrock of resistance against covert manipulation. By developing the capacity to detect these behaviors, individuals empower themselves to break free from the cycle of control, paving the way for a healthier emotional environment and more fulfilling relationships. In the next section, we will examine how these manipulative dynamics escalate over time and how victims can become entrenched within cycles of control, allowing for a deeper understanding of the psychological traps that entangle them. Breaking free from the clutches of dark psychological tactics requires a multifaceted approach grounded in self-awareness and clarity. One of the most powerful strategies is to develop a keen trust in your instincts. This trust acts as an internal compass, guiding you through the fog of doubt that manipulators thrive upon. When you start to feel discordant emotions such as anxiety, confusion, or a nagging sense of discomfort, recognize that these feelings serve as vital signals. They indicate that something is amiss and that scrutiny of the relationship is necessary. By acknowledging and acting upon these instincts, you can begin the process of liberation from manipulative dynamics. To bolster this inner strength, consider establishing a practice of reflection. Setting aside time to evaluate your feelings and experiences can shed light on unclear aspects of your relationships. Journaling can be particularly useful for this purpose. Write down your thoughts and emotions after interactions that leave you feeling uneasy. Examine specific instances where you felt undermined or manipulated. This practice of reflection helps to clarify your thoughts, empowering you to recognize toxic patterns more readily. By reinforcing your understanding of how subtle influence affects you, you become better equipped to set boundaries and reclaim your voice. Another crucial aspect is regaining clarity in decision-making. Manipulators often exploit your uncertainty, creating a state where you begin to doubt your thoughts or choices. Combat this by affirming your decision-making capabilities. When faced with choices affected by a manipulator, take a step back and evaluate them independently. Ask yourself what you genuinely want, separate from their influence. This detachment serves to rebuild your confidence. Surrounding yourself with supportive friends or family who can provide external perspectives also aids in regaining that clarity. Empowerment emerges from the ability to define your needs, articulate your boundaries, and take action against manipulation. Once you begin to dismantle the facade created by the manipulator, you will notice a shift in your mindset. You'll become increasingly resilient, capable of recognizing when someone attempts to exert influence over your emotions, thoughts, or decisions. As you equip yourself with these tools, remember that understanding these tactics will fortify your emotional well-being for the long term. You'll cultivate the strength necessary to assert your independence, making you less susceptible to future attempts at manipulation. In the journey ahead, you will find that the knowledge you gain acts as armor against psychological encroachment and erosion of your self-esteem. In the next chapter, we will delve deeper into the escalating nature of control once manipulation takes root, exploring the signs that indicate that the cycle has tightened its grip. You'll learn how to recognize when these dynamics shift from subtle influences to overt control, preparing you to identify the tipping points that require immediate action. Before moving on, we invite you to share your thoughts and experiences with us. Engage with our community by liking this content and subscribing to Stealth Psychology. Your feedback is invaluable in shaping our discussions and content. Remember, the understanding of these psychological tactics equips you with the power to resist, ensuring you will never be controlled in the same way again. Embrace this knowledge and move forward with confidence. Chapter 3: Spotting Deception in Everyday Interactions. Imagine this. During a casual conversation at a social gathering, you find yourself speaking with an acquaintance who seems genuinely interested in your thoughts. As you share your ideas, they nod thoughtfully, occasionally expressing agreement that feels affirming. This initial connection lulls you into a comfortable state, but soon their questions shift from casual curiosity to probing inquiries that seem targeted. They ask increasingly personal questions, subtly swirling the conversation back to their own experiences or grievances. As they share these stories, you start to feel an unspoken pressure to validate their feelings and offer support, despite your initial excitement to share your thoughts. This is a classic example of psychological manipulation in action, where the manipulator's ultimate goal is to gain emotional control over you while quietly eroding your sense of autonomy. In this interaction, they entice you to invest in their narrative, positioning themselves as a sympathetic figure. The subtle shift from friendly engagement to emotional entitlement often goes unnoticed by the victim, who fails to recognize the tactics employed until they are firmly entrenched in the manipulator's web. Victims frequently overlook the signs of manipulation because they are conditioned to prioritize harmony and connection in social situations. The initial charm of the manipulator disarms their target, creating an environment in which the victim feels safe to express themselves. The manipulator exploits this vulnerability, crafting conversations that serve their interests while extracting emotional validation from their victims. It isn't until later, perhaps when the environment shifts, that the victim reflects on how much they have compromised their own perspectives in favor of the manipulator's needs. The allure of these deceptive interactions is amplified by the manipulator's adeptness at fostering emotional dissonance. They might make unfortunate comments or exaggerated claims about their past, painting themselves as a victim in countless failed friendships, jobs, or role models. This pattern can leave you feeling guilty if you don't provide the support they seek. Consequently, your engagement turns defensive. You begin to question whether you are being a good friend or acquaintance. Each interaction can lead to a gradual erosion of self-confidence, leaving you feeling more uncertain about your thoughts and judgments. The psychological tactics at play here are insidious. Research in social psychology highlights that manipulation can manifest subtly through social cues, making it challenging for the victim to discern when they are being played. When well-meaning empathy is twisted into emotional dependency, the victim can find themselves in a precarious position where their instincts tell them something is wrong, yet they are reluctant to disrupt the rapport they've established. Understanding the various forms of manipulation is crucial to recognizing these patterns in everyday interactions. The realization that even seemingly benign conversations can hide ulterior motives is an important step toward empowerment. Once you start spotting these subtle deceptions, you open the door to better protecting yourself against emotional exploitation. As we continue to explore the nuances of spotting deception, it is imperative to sharpen your observational skills and cultivate a practice of critical thinking regarding relationships. By doing so, you equip yourself with the knowledge needed to navigate social scenarios, aware of the potential for manipulation. The road ahead will illuminate the warning signs that too often go unnoticed, guiding you toward healthier interpersonal dynamics and fostering an unwavering sense of self. The impact of subtle deception in everyday interactions can be profound, deeply affecting emotions, decision-making, relationships, and self-esteem. Victims of manipulation often find themselves caught in a complex web of confusion and self-doubt. Initially, these interactions may feel fulfilling, marked by a false sense of connection or understanding. However, as the manipulator's deceptive tactics layer over time, the victim's emotional stability begins to unravel. The emotional toll becomes apparent through heightened anxiety, resentment, and a pervasive sense of inadequacy that can permeate various aspects of life. Take the example of Sarah, a dedicated employee who often goes above and beyond for her team. When a charismatic coworker praises her work, she feels validated and motivated to collaborate further. However, as time progresses, this coworker begins to subtly undermine her contributions, cycling between compliments and criticisms. Each time Sarah receives praise, she becomes increasingly reliant on this coworker's validation, which distorts her perception of her own abilities. This emotional manipulation leaves Sarah constantly second-guessing her decisions, leading her to refrain from contributing ideas in meetings out of fear of rejection or ridicule. This cycle of dependency reverberates beyond the workplace. Relationships outside of work may suffer as well, as Sarah becomes preoccupied with her coworkers' opinions, distancing herself from friends and family who offer genuine support. She may dismiss their encouragement, believing it holds less weight than the approval of the manipulator. Studies in psychology emphasize that emotional manipulation often leads to increased levels of stress, anxiety, and depression among victims, which in turn diminishes self-esteem. Individuals trapped in these dynamics may feel an overwhelming need to please the manipulator, sacrificing their own thoughts and desires in the process. People fall victim to these deceptive practices for various reasons. At the core, the desire for acceptance and validation plays a significant role. The initial charm of the manipulator draws victims in, creating an illusion of camaraderie. Many individuals are conditioned to prioritize social harmony, leading them to overlook red flags in favor of maintaining a congenial atmosphere. As the manipulator expertly navigates emotional terrains, they exploit the vulnerabilities of their victims, creating scenarios where the victim feels responsible for any disharmony or discontent. Research demonstrates that cognitive dissonance often compounds this cycle of manipulation. Conflicting thoughts and feelings arise when a victim recognizes that their perception of a relationship is at odds with the reality of that interaction. This internal struggle can immobilize decision-making, as victims grapple with their instincts versus the distorted justifications presented by the manipulator. Recognizing these dynamics is vital for breaking free from emotionally manipulative relationships. As the chapter explores the consequences of subtle deception, it becomes clear that the emotional fallout can be significant and far-reaching, affecting one's ability to engage meaningfully with others. The next section will delve into the hidden warning signs that most people overlook, shedding light on the subtle cues that indicate when manipulation is at play. By identifying these red flags early on, you will enhance your ability to protect yourself from emotional exploitation and reshape your interpersonal interactions in a healthier, more empowered manner. Understanding these tactics is the key to resisting manipulation and ensuring that your self-esteem and well-being remain intact. Manipulators are astute in identifying their targets, often selecting individuals who exhibit certain vulnerabilities, such as a strong need for approval or low self-esteem. They possess an uncanny ability to read social cues and emotional landscapes, allowing them to discern who is most likely to yield to their tactics. For example, in a group setting, a manipulator may zone in on a quieter person who seems eager to please, gauging their reactions to comments and behaviors. These observations enable the manipulator to tailor their approach, employing charm or camaraderie to build a facade of trust and connection. Consider the case of Mark, a recent college graduate who secured a position at a tech startup. During his first few weeks, he became friendly with a senior developer who expressed admiration for Mark's skills. Initially, this attention felt invigorating. However, as time went on, Mark began to notice that the senior developer frequently asked him for help on projects while dismissing his input in team meetings. This dynamic created confusion for Mark. He began to believe that his contributions were insignificant and that he needed to rely on the senior developer for guidance. This manipulation unfolds in layers, unveiling subtle psychological shifts that occur gradually. The manipulator plans their moves meticulously, often starting with flattery or validation to lure in their target. Once trust is established, they begin to criticize or undermine the target's ideas. This process can lead the victim to question their own competence, creating a dependency that fosters compliance. Over time, Mark found himself agreeing with the developer's opinions, even when they contradicted his initial thoughts. This shift in behavior is a common response to manipulation, as victims typically strive for acceptance in a relationship characterized by control. The denial and cognitive dissonance that victims endure further complicate the manipulation process. Victims may find themselves rationalizing or downplaying the manipulator's behavior, convincing themselves that it's a passing phase, or that they misinterpreted the intentions behind the manipulator's actions. Mark started to tell himself that if he simply worked harder and earned the developer's appreciation, his ideas would eventually be recognized. This internal dialogue provides a comforting narrative, allowing victims to persist in a damaging relationship despite their growing discomfort. Understanding these tactics becomes crucial for self-defense against manipulation. Identifying the patterns of behavior exhibited by manipulators is the first step toward developing a toolkit for resistance. Awareness facilitates the ability to recognize when you are being subtly drawn into a trap, prompting you to question the intentions behind seemingly innocuous interactions. It becomes essential to foster an internal dialogue that affirms your self-worth and encourages you to voice your opinions assertively. As we continue our exploration of these dynamics, we will delve into the escalation of control that often occurs once manipulation takes root. Victims may find themselves ensnared in cycles they never expected to enter, where their autonomy diminishes further over time. By illuminating the mechanisms of control, we aim to equip you with the knowledge necessary to break free from the manipulative patterns that can emerge in personal and professional relationships. Understanding these tactics ensures that you remain vigilant and empowered in your interactions, ready to assert your autonomy and reclaim your sense of self. Breaking free from dark psychological tactics, particularly those rooted in subtle deception, requires a proactive and empowered approach. One of the most effective strategies for liberation is to cultivate a habit of self-reflection and trust in your instincts. When you start to feel confused or uncomfortable in a relationship, it's essential to take a step back and evaluate those feelings. Recognizing that manipulative tactics thrive in uncertainty can be your first line of defense. By developing a heightened awareness of your emotional landscape, you can regain clarity and begin to dismantle the influence of the manipulator. A practical counter-strategy is to establish boundaries firmly rooted in self-respect. Defining what is acceptable in your relationships allows you to articulate your needs and expectations clearly. When you feel your boundaries being encroached upon, be it through emotional manipulation or subtle criticisms, enforce these limits with conviction. For example, if a colleague continues to undermine your contributions in meetings, assertively expressing that you will not tolerate such behavior can halt the progression of manipulation. This assertion not only affirms your self-worth, but it also sends a clear message that you will no longer be a passive participant in interactions that diminish your confidence. Furthermore, consider keeping a journal dedicated to your emotional experiences and encounters. Documenting interactions can provide you with perspective and clarity, helping you to identify patterns of manipulation more effectively. By routinely reflecting on your thoughts and feelings, you equip yourself to recognize signs of emotional exploitation as they arise. This practice fosters resilience and empowers you to take appropriate action when you observe the red flags of manipulation. Trusting your instincts is essential in this process. When something feels off, allow yourself to investigate those feelings instead of brushing them aside. Often, intuition can guide your decision-making by signaling when an environment is toxic or unsupportive. Engage in honest conversations with trusted friends or mentors about your experiences, as external perspectives can aid in clarifying uncertainties that may cloud your judgment. As you utilize these strategies, remember that understanding and navigating manipulation can significantly alter the power dynamics in your relationships. Each step you take toward recognizing these tactics diminishes their impact. Empowerment emerges from knowledge, and you will find that your conviction enables healthier interactions fueled by mutual respect. Looking ahead, the next chapter will delve into the escalation of manipulation and control. We will explore how subtle tactics can evolve into more overt forms of dominance, providing insights into the cycles that entrap victims. By preparing you to identify the escalation of control, we aim to fortify your defenses against these powerful psychological traps. Before we move on, we encourage you to engage with our community. Like this content, subscribe to Stealth Psychology, and share your thoughts or suggestions in the comments. Your input is invaluable and helps shape the direction of our discussions. Remember, the more you understand these psychological tactics, the less susceptible you will be to their effects. You have the strength to break free and embrace a life of autonomy and self-assurance. Once you comprehend these strategies, you will never again find yourself under their sway. Chapter 4. Gaslighting and the Illusion of Control. Imagine a close friendship that gradually falters under the weight of doubt. Laura has always considered herself well-grounded, confident in her opinions and decisions. However, over the course of several months, she begins to notice a disturbing pattern in her conversations with her friend, Rachel. Initially supportive, Rachel now routinely dismisses Laura's feelings and opinions, often saying things like, "You're overreacting, that never happened," or "You really shouldn't feel that way." What started as casual disagreements slowly morphs into a barrage of denial that leaves Laura questioning her reality. With every conversation, she feels increasingly confused and isolated, unable to reconcile her perceptions with Rachel's insistence that she is wrong. This scenario highlights the manipulative tactic of gaslighting, wherein the ultimate goal is emotional control. Manipulators like Rachel thrive on the ability to distort reality for their victims, fostering an environment of doubt and confusion. The broader implications of this manipulation are profound. Victims often fail to recognize the full extent of their entrapment until it compounds to an unbearable degree. In Laura's case, she begins to second-guess her memories and instincts, slowly eroding her self-esteem. The insidious nature of gaslighting lies in its subtlety. For many victims, the manipulation starts innocuously, wrapped in the guise of concern or friendship. As Rachel consistently undermines Laura's experiences, she positions herself as the voice of reason, effectively placing her own narrative above Laura's. Consequently, Laura's increasing reliance on Rachel for validation empowers the manipulator while further entrenching her in a state of confusion. This manipulation is particularly daunting because it reveals itself through the manipulation of emotions, casting doubt on the victim's perceptions and leading them to feel they are inadequate. Psychological research illustrates just how damaging gaslighting can be. A study published in the Journal of Interpersonal Violence suggests that individuals subjected to gaslighting experience significant cognitive dissonance, leading to heightened anxiety and depressive symptoms. Being constantly told that one's perceptions are incorrect can result in a profound emotional crisis, leaving them feeling helpless. Victims may even find themselves withdrawing from their social circles. fearing that their perspectives will be dismissed by others as well. The failure to recognize the signs of gaslighting places individuals at risk of further psychological damage. They often rationalize the manipulator's behavior, believing that perhaps they truly are overly sensitive or misunderstanding the contexts. This self-doubt becomes a powerful tool for manipulators who can perpetuate their control by creating an illusion of reality that serves their interests. In Laura's situation, if she remains unaware of the manipulative tactics at play, she risks becoming further entrenched in her emotional turmoil. The inability to see the truth distorts not only her relationship with Rachel, but also her sense of self. In this way, gaslighting operates as a gateway to deeper emotional exploitation. Recognizing the signs of this manipulation is crucial for breaking free from its grasp and reclaiming agency. Understanding gaslighting is imperative for those who seek to maintain control over their emotional well-being. The deconstruction of one's perceptions by a manipulator can be devastating, but awareness of this tactic empowers individuals to challenge it. In the subsequent sections, we will explore practical strategies for resilience and how to reclaim one's sense of reality, paving the way for a more authentic and fulfilling life. The psychological effects of gaslighting ripple through a victim's emotional landscape, profoundly altering their decision-making capabilities, relationships, and self-esteem. Victims often experience a debilitating sense of confusion, leading to heightened anxiety and depression. As their perceptions are systematically undermined, individuals may begin to doubt their judgment and instincts, making critical decisions increasingly difficult. This erosion of confidence fosters a reliance on the manipulator, creating a cycle where the victim feels compelled to seek approval and validation from the very person who is distorting their reality. Consider the case of Ethan, a talented graphic designer who was frequently praised for his innovative work. Over time, his colleague, Sarah, began to assert her superior vision over his designs, often dismissing Ethan's input. She would say things like, "I'm not sure that approach is right. Let me show you how it should be done," followed by subtle implications that Ethan's work was not up to par. With each instance of criticism disguised as guidance, Ethan began to doubt his creative decisions. He found himself sidelined in group projects and second-guessing his artistic abilities. This shift not only hampered his professional growth, but also led to feelings of inadequacy that seeped into his personal life. Ethan's relationships began to suffer as well. He withdrew from social interactions, believing he had little to offer beyond what Sarah deemed acceptable. The emotional toll of gaslighting is further compounded by its insidious nature, making it easy for victims to fall into its trap. Individuals often rationalize the manipulator's behavior, framing it as an act of concern or mentorship. In Ethan's case, he initially saw Sarah as a friend who only wanted to help him improve. This misperception underscores a broader truth. People who struggle with self-doubt or lack a strong support system may find themselves particularly vulnerable to gaslighting tactics. Research indicates that those prone to anxiety or low self-esteem are more likely to accept another person's distorted narratives, leading them to question their perceptions in an effort to maintain social cohesion. Additionally, gaslighting can dismantle trust in relationships beyond the manipulator. Victims may begin to withdraw from others, fearing judgment or dismissal. This isolation exacerbates emotional distress and further reinforces the manipulator's hold, effectively alienating the victim from potential support systems that could help them reclaim their autonomy. Studies show that social withdrawal associated with gaslighting can lead to significant psychological harm, perpetuating a cycle of loneliness and despair. To navigate away from these detrimental dynamics, individuals must cultivate awareness of the emotional shifts gaslighting instigates. Recognizing the signs of manipulation is crucial for establishing boundaries and preserving one's self-esteem. Victims must learn to internalize their truths and reject the narratives imposed by their manipulators, a process that requires immense courage and self-reflection. As we transition into the next section of this chapter, we will uncover the hidden warning signs of gaslighting that many people overlook. By identifying these subtle cues early on, individuals can better protect themselves and begin to break free from the cycle of manipulation. This knowledge is instrumental in empowering those affected by gaslighting, reinforcing the idea that they have the strength to reclaim their reality and foster healthier relationships grounded in mutual respect and understanding. Understanding these tactics is the first step toward regaining control and autonomy in your life. Manipulators who employ gaslighting tactics are often adept at identifying their targets, honing in on individuals who exhibit vulnerabilities such as low self-esteem, a strong need for approval, or difficulties in asserting themselves. These predators typically analyze their surroundings, searching for signs of emotional fragility or a desire for connection. For instance, in a workplace setting, a charismatic colleague may pay extra attention to an employee who seems eager to please, luring them in with flattery and establishing superficial rapport. Once trust is gained, the manipulator deftly employs tactics designed to distort the target's reality, all while maintaining an outward appearance of benevolence. Consider the situation of Julia, a new team leader excited to implement her vision. Early in her tenure, she found an ally in Robert, a senior team member with charm and an extensive network. Initially, Robert provided guidance and compliments, seeming genuinely interested in Julia's ideas. However, as her leadership began to grow, Robert subtly began to undermine her authority. He would express doubts about her plans during meetings, always wrapping his feedback in a veneer of support, saying, "I just want to make sure you're considering all angles." This passive-aggressive approach left Julia questioning her competence. As time passed, the psychological shifts Julia experienced became harder to ignore. Robert's initial encouragement turned into a series of belittling comments, disguised as constructive criticism, leading her to feel insecure. She started second-guessing not only her decisions, but also her perception of reality. Each time Julia hesitated to present her ideas, believing they were flawed, she inadvertently collapsed into a pattern of dependence on Robert's validation. This dependency created a debilitating cycle. As Julia's self-confidence plummeted, Robert's influence ballooned. Through real-life cases like Julia's, we can observe how manipulators exploit the emotional landscapes of their victims. The initial connection that might feel like mentorship or camaraderie is often a facade designed to establish control. The manipulator tracks how their target reacts to feedback and adjusts their strategies accordingly. For example, if Julia initially defends her ideas, Robert may respond with dismissive laughter or ridicule, discouraging her assertiveness and nudging her towards compliance. The subtleties of gaslighting can be particularly injurious because they distort the victim's perception. Victims may begin to interpret their own emotions as unreasonable, convincing themselves that they are overreacting or misunderstanding interactions. This mental maneuvering is precisely what manipulators aim for, creating a dynamic in which their victims rely on them for validation, further entrenching the emotional dependence. Understanding these manipulative tactics is critical for self-defense against emotional exploitation. By recognizing the patterns in interactions that signal a manipulator is at work, individuals can begin to dismantle these harmful dynamics. Awareness allows victims to challenge their own narratives and reclaim their sense of reality. It is essential to ask critical questions. Is this interaction making me feel insecure? Or am I doubting my choices because of this person's influence? With this knowledge, the next part of our discussion will delve deeper into the escalation of control frequently observed in manipulative relationships. We will explore how initial tactics of gaslighting can develop into more intricate schemes that entrap victims even further. Understanding these mechanisms will empower you to maintain a vigilant stance against manipulation, enabling you to establish healthier boundaries and assert your autonomy effectively. Recognizing these tactics is the first step toward resistance, and your journey towards reclaiming your reality is just beginning. To break free from the dark psychological tactic of gaslighting, it is essential to implement a robust counter-strategy focused on reclaiming clarity and asserting personal truth. The first step toward liberation is to trust your instincts. Gaslighting thrives in an environment of doubt and confusion, creating a fog that distorts your perception of reality. When you start to feel uncertain about your thoughts or experiences, it is crucial to pause and reflect on why that sensation is emerging. Trusting your instincts means recognizing these feelings as valid signals that something may be amiss. One effective practical strategy for countering gaslighting involves maintaining a detailed journal, documenting your interactions and feelings. This practice facilitates self-reflection and serves as a tangible record of your experiences. By writing down specific incidents where you felt your perceptions were challenged or dismissed, you create an invaluable resource for clarity. Regularly reviewing your entries can help reinforce your sense of reality, allowing you to recognize patterns of manipulation. It also serves as a reference point when confronted with gaslighting tactics, enabling you to point to the discrepancies between your perceptions and the manipulator's claims. Another essential component of liberation is establishing strong emotional boundaries. This involves defining what behaviors you will no longer accept in relationships. For instance, communicate clearly with the manipulator about how their comments make you feel. If a colleague like Robert continues to undermine your contributions, assertively articulate that you will no longer tolerate dismissive remarks. Establishing boundaries sends a powerful message that you are reclaiming your autonomy and will no longer be a passive recipient of emotional manipulation. Additionally, seek support from understanding friends or counselors who can validate your experiences and provide an external perspective. Engaging with those who lift you up can provide the encouragement you need to reinforce your resolve and recognize your worth. This network serves as a powerful antidote to the isolation that gaslighting often breeds, reminding you that your feelings and perceptions are valid and worth defending. Empowerment grows as you implement these strategies, reinforcing the notion that your reality is your own. You begin to dismantle the manipulator's ability to distort your perceptions, embracing the clarity that comes from trusting yourself. The more you assert your boundaries and draw upon your support network, the less hold the manipulator has over your emotional well-being. As we transition into the next chapter, we will further examine the escalation of control in manipulative relationships. We'll explore how initial tactics of gaslighting can evolve into more extensive schemes that deepen the sense of entrapment for the victim. Understanding the incremental nature of this escalation is vital for maintaining your independence and emotional health. Before we conclude, we urge you to engage with our Stealth Psychology community. Like this content, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more insights into self-defense against psychological manipulation. Remember, the more you understand and recognize these tactics, the more empowered you will become. Once you have grasped these concepts, you will never again fall victim to emotional control in the same way. You possess the strength to reclaim your reality and foster healthier relationships grounded in trust and respect. Your journey toward empowerment has only just begun. Chapter 5. Psychological Traps and Emotional Exploitation. Picture this: Mia, a talented writer, feels the thrill of receiving an opportunity to collaborate on a project with a renowned author, Ryan. At first, Mia is elated. Ryan's praises seem genuine, and he frequently affirms her ideas during discussions. However, as they delve deeper into the project, a subtle shift occurs. Ryan starts to critique Mia's work more harshly, labeling her once cherished ideas as inexperienced or childish, while simultaneously taking credit for concepts that originated from her. This strategic manipulation serves Ryan's ultimate goal of emotional control, creating an environment where Mia doubts her abilities and grows increasingly reliant on his approval. Mia's reality becomes clouded by confusion and self-doubt, hallmarks of psychological manipulation. Ryan expertly employs tactics that keep her on uncertain ground. Each time he dismisses her contributions, his words are carefully interwoven with a veneer of constructive criticism, imbuing his attempts at control with an air of legitimacy. Mia finds herself ensnared in a cycle where she feels compelled to please Ryan to regain his approval, ultimately leading her to silence her own voice. Victims of psychological traps often fail to recognize the extent of their entrapment until significant damage has been done. Mia convinces herself that Ryan's mentorship is necessary for her success. She sees his belittling comments as tough love, rather than manipulation. This misperception drives her deeper into dependency, blinding her to the erosion of her self-esteem and autonomy. The emotional toll becomes increasingly evident as she questions her professional worth and begins to withdraw from her friends and support network, believing that they lack an understanding of her unique situation with Ryan. Manipulators like Ryan thrive on the chaos they create, using calculated deceptions to exploit their victims' vulnerabilities. They masterfully dismantle their target's confidence, leaving them feeling disconnected from reality and their own capabilities. Each criticism and undermining comment tightens the trap, pushing victims like Mia further into isolation and compliance. Once a vibrant and confident writer, she now feels as if she must cater to Ryan's every need, fearing that any assertion of her own ideas will lead to rejection or further degradation. Psychological research highlights the correlation between emotional exploitation and long-term mental health issues, such as anxiety and depression. The subtle ways in which a manipulator chips away at their victim's self-worth can create lasting scars, making recovery challenging. Many individuals embroiled in these traps may not even realize they are being manipulated. They mistake the gradual loss of autonomy for normal stressors in their careers or relationships. Recognizing the patterns of psychological traps is vital for breaking free from emotional exploitation. Understanding the manipulator's tactics allows individuals to confront their own perceptions of reality and begin to assert their autonomy. Awareness builds a foundation upon which to reclaim one's voice, a critical step in resisting manipulation. As we conclude this section, we will explore how to navigate these psychological traps in the following chapter. Together, we will uncover practical strategies to combat emotional exploitation and empower you to safeguard your well-being. Understanding these tactics is not just about awareness. It is about taking action to preserve your identity, autonomy, and emotional health amidst the challenges of manipulation. The journey to reclaim your power is essential, and it begins with recognizing the traps that seek to ensnare you. The emotional effects of psychological traps can be devastating, profoundly impacting victims' self-esteem, decision-making, and interpersonal relationships. When individuals like Mia find themselves ensnared in these manipulative dynamics, their emotions often swing between confidence and crippling self-doubt. Initially excited by the attention and validation from their manipulator, victims can quickly spiral into a state of confusion where they doubt their own rationality and judgment. The constant undermining of their ideas creates an emotional roller coaster, where moments of validation are followed by sharp criticism, leading to a distrust of their perceptions. Take the case of Alex, who was once a confident public speaker. After agreeing to collaborate with a dominating partner, Sarah, Alex began to second-guess every aspect of his presentation style. Initially, Sarah praised his ideas, but soon her tone shifted. She began to nitpick minor details, suggesting that Alex's contributions lacked depth and coherence. This insidious process eroded his self-esteem. Alex found himself investing excessive time in perfecting every little aspect Sarah criticized, fearful that any misstep would lead to further derision. As a result, he missed opportunities to share his ideas with others, retreating from the very community that once inspired him, further fueling his isolation. Psychological research offers insight into this phenomenon. The concept of learned helplessness illustrates how individuals subjected to continuous manipulation can come to believe they have no control over their situations. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology provides evidence that victims of manipulation can internalize their circumstances, leading them to feel trapped and unable to escape the constraints imposed by their manipulator. This cycle discourages victims from making independent choices, reinforcing their dependence on the manipulator for validation and direction. Individuals often fall prey to these psychological traps due to their fundamental human need for connection and acceptance. In the search for approval, they may manifest a willingness to overlook red flags or diminish their own experiences to appease the manipulator. Even those who are otherwise self-assured can find themselves questioning their worth as the manipulator expertly weaves doubt into the fabric of their interactions, making it difficult to recognize the manipulation for what it is. The psychological traps not only harm self-esteem, but also warp a victim's decision-making processes. Drenched in uncertainty and fear of being wrong, victims often default to the opinions and decisions of the manipulative figure, sidelining their judgment. This reliance leads to a cycle of compromised integrity and further entrapment, as their original voice becomes a faint echo beneath the manipulation. Understanding the effects of psychological traps is crucial for breaking free from emotional exploitation. Recognizing the connection between manipulation and the erosion of self-esteem can empower victims to challenge the narrative imposed upon them. They can learn to reclaim their voice and decisions, setting boundaries and asserting their needs as they navigate their relationships. As we move into the next section of this chapter, we will delve into the hidden warning signs of psychological traps that often go unnoticed. Recognizing these signs early is critical to overcoming manipulation and re-establishing one's autonomy. With this awareness, you can cultivate a proactive approach to safeguard your emotional well-being and reinforce your resilience against such tactics in the future. Awareness is the first vital step toward liberation, equipping you with the tools to shield yourself from emotional exploitation moving forward. Manipulators skilled in psychological traps are adept at identifying their targets by observing their vulnerabilities and needs. They often seek individuals who exhibit traits such as low self-esteem, a strong desire for approval, or emotional dependence. This keen observational ability allows manipulators to tailor their tactics to maximize control and exploitation, effectively ensnaring their victims in a web of doubt and dependency. For instance, they might notice an individual at work who often seeks validation from peers, perceiving this as an opportunity to exert influence. Consider the case of Emma, a diligent employee who often seeks feedback on her work. Her manager, Mark, quickly picks up on Emma's eagerness to please. Initially appearing supportive, he frequently praises her contributions in public, fostering a false sense of empowerment. However, as time progresses, Mark begins to highlight her mistakes in front of colleagues, using phrases like, "I thought you understood this better, Emma." This shift is subtle, but highly effective. Mark's manipulation creates an environment where Emma feels increasingly anxious and uncertain about her abilities, prompting reliance on Mark for affirmation. As Mark establishes this dynamic, Emma begins to internalize his doubts, questioning her competence and stifling her own voice. The psychological shifts that occur during manipulation are often gradual and insidious. Victims like Emma may initially feel empowered by the attention and validation given by the manipulator. However, as the emotional landscape shifts, they experience increasing unease and confusion. Emma soon finds herself second-guessing her instincts and decisions, becoming trapped in a cycle where she feels compelled to seek Mark's approval for even the smallest tasks. This reliance reinforces Mark's power, as Emma progressively surrenders her autonomy in the face of his perceived authority. Research into social psychology reveals how such dynamics operate within manipulated relationships. Studies show that individuals subjected to ongoing emotional exploitation can develop cognitive dissonance, leading them to accept contradictory information about themselves. For Emma, the cycle of praise followed by criticism creates an internal conflict. She grapples with a diminished sense of self while being conditioned to defer to Mark's authority. Over time, this can lead to learned helplessness, a state where victims feel they have no control over their circumstances, further entrenching them in the manipulative dynamic. Moreover, manipulators masterfully exploit emotional vulnerabilities during high-stakes situations. They identify moments when targets experience stress or uncertainty and use these opportunities to further assert control. In a personal relationship, for example, a partner who frequently criticizes their significant other's choices may do so when the individual is already feeling vulnerable or insecure. This strategic timing amplifies the impact of the manipulator's words and actions, fostering feelings of inadequacy and confusion. Understanding these tactics is crucial for self-defense against psychological traps. By identifying the patterns used by manipulators, individuals can cultivate greater awareness of their interactions and recognize when they are being subtly manipulated. Awareness allows victims to challenge the narratives they have adopted, fostering resilience and promoting a stronger sense of self. Moving forward, the next chapter will delve into the escalation of control often seen in psychological manipulation. This exploration will illuminate how initial tactics can evolve into more profound forms of domination over time, further entrenching victims in cycles of dependency and emotional turmoil. Identifying these warning signs early is vital for maintaining autonomy and safeguarding emotional well-being, reinforcing the importance of understanding these complex psychological dynamics as a critical step toward liberation. Breaking free from the psychological traps set by manipulators requires a resolute and proactive approach. One of the most effective strategies for liberation is to cultivate a strong sense of self-awareness and emotional clarity. This begins with the practice of mindfulness, which encourages individuals to tune into their thoughts and feelings without judgment. By gaining awareness of your emotional state, you enable yourself to discern when you are being manipulated. For example, if you start to feel anxious or uncertain during interactions with a specific individual, recognize those feelings as signs that something may be amiss. This instinctive response is your internal compass, guiding you toward healthier relational dynamics. Another crucial counter-strategy is the development of firm boundaries. Understanding what you will and will not accept in terms of behavior is essential to reclaiming your autonomy. When faced with manipulative individuals who attempt to undermine your confidence, it is vital to assert your boundaries clearly and courageously. For instance, if a colleague increasingly deflects credit for your contributions and criticizes your work, you should find the courage and clarity to address this issue head-on. Communicate your feelings assertively and seek resolution. Establishing such boundaries not only reinforces your self-respect but also signals to the manipulator that you are no longer an easy target for psychological games. To further enhance your resilience, incorporate a journaling practice into your routine. Documenting your thoughts, feelings, and the occurrences of any manipulative behavior serves multiple purposes. It allows you to externalize your emotions, providing clarity and perspective, while also creating a record of patterns that may signify manipulation. As you review your entries, patterns may emerge, revealing recurring behaviors that bolster your intuition regarding the manipulator's tactics. This written record becomes a powerful tool for self-reflection and empowerment. Also, consider surrounding yourself with supportive individuals who affirm your worth and provide honest feedback. Trustworthy friends or mentors can offer insights that help counteract the insidious effects of manipulation. Engaging in conversations with those who respect and value you reinforces a positive self-image, enabling you to replay the manipulator's narratives in your mind. Their support sets a healthy contrast to the negative reinforcement you may receive from manipulators. Trusting your instincts, asserting boundaries, journaling, and cultivating a support network all contribute to regaining clarity and emotional strength. As you implement these strategies, you build a foundation from which you can confidently distance yourself from psychological traps. Awareness and validation from understood individuals allow you to replace confusion with empowerment, leading you to view manipulation through a lens of strength. As we transition into the next chapter, we will explore the escalation of control often employed by manipulators once their tactics have taken root. Understanding how these dynamics evolve is crucial for recognizing when to take action and breaking free from their grasp. The discussion will focus on the increasing dominance of the manipulator in the relationship, illuminating the warning signs of deeper entrapment. Before concluding, we encourage you to engage with our stealth psychology community. Like this content, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for further insights into navigating the complexities of psychological manipulation. Remember, the more you understand these tactics, the more empowered you will be to resist them. Once you grasp these concepts, you will no longer find yourself ensnared in their control. You possess the strength to reclaim your autonomy and foster relationships that honor your true self. Your journey toward empowerment continues, and with each step, you move closer to a life free from the shadows of manipulation. Chapter 6. Breaking Free from Manipulative Cycles. Imagine Alex, a bright and ambitious young professional who starts a promising job at a marketing firm. At first, he feels supported and energized, buoyed by praise from his manager, Lisa, who seems genuinely invested in his success. However, as weeks pass, her demeanor shifts from encouragement to a steady drumbeat of nitpicking and criticism. "You don't really understand this topic, do you?" she casually remarks in meetings, sowing seeds of doubt. Alex begins to question his skill set and instincts. Slowly, he finds himself spending hours second-guessing his ideas, constantly seeking Lisa's approval and ignoring his own insights. In this scenario, Lisa's ultimate goal is emotional control over Alex, turning his once bright enthusiasm into a source of instability. She exploits his initial eagerness and insecurity, creating a dependency that is insidious yet profound. Alex fails to realize the extent of this manipulation until it begins to impact his mental health and self-worth. He feels stuck in a cycle where every effort he makes seems inadequate in the eyes of Lisa, leaving him psychologically trapped. This situation underscores a critical truth about psychological manipulation. The gradual nature of the tactic makes it exceedingly difficult for victims to recognize their entrapment until it is often too late. Victims like Alex frequently overlook the warning signs, blinded by a desire for approval or fear of conflict. They may rationalize the manipulative behavior as genuine feedback or concern, convincing themselves that the discomfort they feel is merely a byproduct of striving for excellence. This misperception perpetuates a cycle of compliance, where the victim increasingly conforms to the manipulator's demands, stifling their own voice and self-confidence. Research indicates that individuals caught in manipulative cycles often experience a diminishing sense of agency, leading to heightened anxiety and depression. As their inner narrative becomes shaped by the words and actions of the manipulator, victims may begin to internalize doubt and develop a pervasive belief that they are unworthy or incapable. This emotional impact not only affects their professional performance, but spills into personal relationships as well. Victims may isolate themselves from friends and family, retreating into a protective shell, afraid that they might be judged for their perceived failures. The critical challenge is that manipulators like Lisa are often skilled in their tactics, using charm and criticism interchangeably. They create a facade of care while tightening their grip on their victim's emotional state. This duality makes it confusing for victims to differentiate genuine concern from manipulation, thus further entrenching them within the cycle. To break free from these manipulative cycles, it is essential to recognize and confront the emotional control exerted over you. Understanding the motives behind the manipulator's behavior is the first step toward reclaiming one's autonomy. Awareness opens the door to questioning their intent and the validity of the critical feedback being received. As victims begin to see the patterns of manipulation, they can start to develop strategies that allow them to regain control over their decisions and emotions. The urgency to learn about these psychological cycles cannot be overstated. The more individuals understand manipulation, the better equipped they become to identify it in their lives, enabling them to break free from the damaging hold that such cycles create. The journey toward liberation begins with knowledge and awareness, setting the foundation for healthier, more empowering interactions. In the next part of this chapter, we will explore practical strategies for dismantling these manipulative cycles permanently. We will discuss how to assert your boundaries effectively and reclaim your narrative, ensuring that you move confidently toward a healthier emotional landscape. Understanding these dynamics will empower you to rewrite your story and escape the clutches of manipulation. The impact of manipulative cycles on emotions, decision-making, relationships, and self-esteem cannot be overstated. Victims like Alex often find their emotional states in constant flux, oscillating between moments of self-doubt and brief moments of validation from the manipulator. These emotional ups and downs can create a profound sense of confusion, leading victims to question their perceptions and capabilities. Over time, this turbulence can foster anxiety and depression, compounding an already precarious emotional landscape. Take, for instance, the case of Samantha. As a capable and confident team leader, she found herself working with Nathan, a colleague who initially appeared supportive. However, over time, Nathan's behavior shifted. He began subtly undermining her decisions during team meetings, often suggesting that her ideas were overly ambitious or not grounded in reality. As Nathan's critical commentary became more frequent, Samantha's decision-making ability eroded. She began to doubt her instincts and frequently sought Nathan's approval before making even minor choices, leading her to paralyze her own thought processes. This dependence stifled her leadership potential and disintegrated her confidence, effectively trapping her in a manipulative cycle. Psychological research supports this observation, indicating that when individuals are subjected to ongoing manipulation, their cognitive functions can become compromised. A study published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships found that victims of manipulation often develop cognitive dissonance, where they struggle to reconcile their beliefs with their experiences, leading them to internalize feelings of inadequacy and confusion. Thus, Samantha's decision-making ability became compromised not just by Nathan's criticisms, but also by her irrational self-recrimination resulting from them. Relationships outside the manipulative dynamic also suffer significantly under these conditions. Victims may withdraw from friends and family, fearing that they will not be understood or that they will receive harsh judgment about their choices. Samantha, unsure of her leadership ability, stopped engaging in social outings and professional events where she once thrived. The isolation deepened her emotional turmoil, creating a cycle where increasing estrangement from supportive networks reinforced her dependence on Nathan. She began to think that he was her only ally, compelling her to dismiss the voices of those who genuinely cared for her well-being. Understanding why people fall prey to these manipulative cycles is crucial. Manipulators are often charismatic and perceptive, preying on vulnerabilities such as insecurity or a yearning for acceptance. Their skillful blending of praise and criticism creates an intoxicating dynamic that can easily entrap even the most self-assured individuals. Victims may rationalize the manipulative behavior as necessary for their growth, or believe that enduring the uncomfortable interactions will lead to personal or professional benefits. The urgency to recognize and confront these emotional manipulations is paramount. As these cycles continue, victims can find themselves not only entrapped in toxic relationships, but also fundamentally altered in their sense of self-worth. The critical task ahead involves cultivating a sense of self-awareness and empowerment that breaks the cycle of dependency and compliance. As we transition to the next part of this chapter, we will examine the hidden warning signs of manipulation that often go unnoticed. By highlighting these indicators, you will be better equipped to identify when these dynamics begin to take shape in your life, enabling you to thwart manipulation before it has a chance to take root. Understanding these tactics is not merely about enhancing awareness. It is about developing the tools necessary to reclaim your identity and foster healthier, more fulfilling relationships. The journey toward liberation from manipulative cycles starts with recognizing their presence in your life, and the knowledge you gain will be instrumental in facilitating that process. Manipulators are often skilled at identifying their targets, using an acute awareness of social dynamics and individual vulnerabilities to choose victims who are especially susceptible to their tactics. They keenly observe behaviors, listening for signs of insecurity, a strong desire for approval, or emotional openness. For example, someone like Nathan may have picked up on Samantha's eagerness to succeed, recognizing her dedication and ambition as cues to exploit. This identification process is subtle yet strategic, as manipulators tailor their approaches to maximize the impact of their interference. Consider the case of Jake, who recently joined a sales team. Enthusiastic about making connections, he quickly befriends a senior colleague, Tom, who initially presents himself as a mentor figure. Tom showers Jake with praise for his performance but soon starts to redirect credit for Jake's ideas during team meetings, framing them as his own. This feedback loop creates a dependency where Jake feels increasingly reliant on Tom for validation and guidance. What seems like a supportive relationship masks the subtle shifts of power taking place. Tom's ultimate goal is to establish dominance, and he accomplishes this by strategically eroding Jake's confidence. The psychological shifts occurring during manipulation often manifest gradually, leading the victim to feel confused and helpless. Initially, rewards such as praise and encouragement make the victim feel valued. However, as the manipulator's tactics shift to criticism and control, the victim begins to question their own perceptions and decisions. In Jake's situation, his feelings of self-worth become intertwined with Tom's actions, causing him to doubt his ideas and place increasing value on Tom's approval. This confusion leads to a sense of cognitive dissonance in which Jake struggles to reconcile his abilities with the negative feedback he receives from Tom. Research into social influence shows that the emotional toll of manipulation is profound. Victims may navigate feelings of anxiety due to the constant uncertainty about their worth or ability to perform. A study published in the Journal of Social Psychology reveals that individuals under emotional manipulation often exhibit lower self-esteem levels and an increased likelihood of experiencing intimate relationship difficulties due to the internalized beliefs shaped by the manipulator's actions. Jake might find that his self-doubt extends beyond work, affecting his personal relationships and exacerbating feelings of isolation. Understanding how manipulators operate is crucial for breaking free from these cycles. They often exploit the natural human desire for connection and validation, using flattery to find entry points into the victim's psyche. By celebrating the victim's strengths initially, manipulators can create a false sense of security that allows them to later introduce doubt and criticism without raising alarms. As we discuss these dynamics, it becomes evident that recognizing these psychological shifts is not just important for awareness. It is essential for self-defense. Individuals must sharpen their instincts and reinforce their self-worth, enabling them to push back against the manipulation that seeks to undermine their autonomy. In the next part of this chapter, we will dive deeper into the escalation of control that often follows initial manipulative tactics. Understanding how these dynamics evolve will be instrumental in equipping you with the knowledge to safeguard your emotional well-being and reclaim your power. The awareness you gain will serve as a critical foundation for resisting the cycles of manipulation, allowing you to strengthen your voice and assert your identity in any relationship. Your journey toward empowerment continues, and recognizing these patterns is vital in breaking free from their grip. Breaking free from the manipulative cycles that can ensnare you requires a multifaceted approach rooted in self-awareness and assertiveness. One powerful counter-strategy is the practice of developing and asserting your personal boundaries. Establishing clear boundaries acts as a protective barrier against the emotional exploitation that manipulators often employ. By articulating what behaviors you will not accept, you empower yourself to reclaim control over your emotional landscape. For instance, if a colleague like Tom continues to undermine your contributions, you must communicate that such behavior is unacceptable and impacts your ability to work effectively. To reinforce your boundaries, it is important to trust your instincts. Your gut feelings are often the first indicators that something is amiss in a relationship. If you sense discomfort or unease during interactions, allow yourself to acknowledge those feelings. Recognizing that manipulative tactics thrive in an environment of uncertainty and confusion is key to regaining clarity. The more you tune into your emotions and instincts, the better equipped you will be to navigate challenging dynamics. In addition to boundary setting and trusting your instincts, practice self-reflection to foster clarity about your experiences and emotions. This can be done through journaling or engaging in therapeutic conversations with trusted friends or counselors. Documenting your thoughts allows you to externalize your feelings and sort through your experiences critically. Over time, you may begin to uncover patterns in behavior that indicate manipulation. By identifying these patterns, you can develop strategies to counteract the manipulator's influence. Another vital aspect of breaking free from manipulative cycles is to cultivate a support network. Surrounding yourself with people who validate your feelings and encourage your autonomy can serve as a powerful antidote to the isolation often imposed by manipulators. These supportive relationships reinforce a positive self-image and provide a balanced perspective on your experiences. Engaging in discussions with trusted individuals about your feelings can bolster your confidence and serve as a critical reminder of your worth beyond the manipulator's narrative. As you implement these strategies, remember that reclaiming your power is a gradual process. It will require perseverance, determination, and continuous effort to reinforce your boundaries and trust your instincts. The more you challenge manipulative behaviors and assert your needs, the more empowered you will feel. As we prepare to transition to the next chapter, we will explore the escalation of control within manipulative dynamics. This discussion will illuminate how initial manipulative tactics can evolve into more insidious forms of domination, ensnaring victims even further in cycles of dependency. Before moving on, I encourage you to share your thoughts and experiences with our community. Engage by liking this content, commenting your opinions, and subscribing to Stealth Psychology. Your feedback helps shape our discussions, creating a space where awareness and empowerment can flourish. Remember, understanding these manipulative tactics is the first step toward resistance. Once you grasp these strategies, you will no longer be vulnerable to emotional control in the same way again. Your journey towards autonomy and self-assertion continues, and with each step, you move closer to a life free from manipulation. Chapter 7: Reclaiming Your Power and Autonomy. Picture this: Lisa, a vibrant and confident entrepreneur, launches a startup with dreams of building something great. In the beginning, her enthusiasm is contagious, and she attracts a small but dedicated team. Among them is Mark, who initially seems passionate and aligned with Lisa's vision. They share late nights brainstorming and celebrating small victories. However, as the weeks roll by, Mark's supportive demeanor subtly shifts. He begins to interject during meetings, undermining Lisa's ideas and slowly steering the team away from her original goals. What once felt like a partnership becomes a struggle for influence, where Mark consistently positions himself as the sole authority on what is best for the company. Mark's ultimate goal is to neutralize Lisa's leadership and emotional control, ensuring his vision replaces hers. As Lisa navigates through this complexity, she finds herself increasingly questioning her instincts and capabilities. While Mark's behavior might initially seem innocuous, Lisa becomes trapped in a relationship characterized by slow, escalating manipulation. She fails to recognize how profoundly this dynamic affects her, believing that if she just works harder, everything will revert to normal. The insidious nature of Mark's influence leads Lisa to experience a crippling sense of self-doubt, gradually stifling the very entrepreneurial spirit that sparked her journey. This scenario highlights a critical truth. Victims often overlook the signs of control until their autonomy is severely compromised. Initially, Lisa may rationalize Mark's critiques as constructive feedback, yielding to his influence under the pretext of improvement. However, as his undermining comments become frequent, they erode her confidence and define her reality. The psychological impact of such manipulation can be profound, leaving victims feeling isolated, powerless, and disconnected from their original aspirations. Understanding the psychological underpinnings of manipulation is essential for victims striving to reclaim their power. Research indicates that individuals entrenched in manipulative dynamics often struggle to assert themselves, frequently doubting their capabilities due to the corrosive effects of emotional control. A study in the Journal of Applied Psychology suggests that such psychological manipulation can lead to long-lasting ramifications on self-esteem and personal agency. As Lisa's self-assurance dims, she becomes more reliant on Mark's approval, further enhancing his control over her. Moreover, victims frequently engage in cognitive dissonance, a state in which they grapple with conflicting beliefs about their worth and the validity of the manipulator's assertions. Lisa experiences this conflict, vacillating between believing in her capabilities and internalizing Mark's negative feedback. This struggle can perpetuate feelings of inadequacy, resulting in an uphill battle to reestablish one's self-worth. As we delve deeper into the intricate patterns of manipulation, it becomes paramount to recognize that reclaiming power and autonomy is not merely about reacting to a manipulative partner or colleague. It involves profound self-reflection, asserting one's voice and setting boundaries that reflect your values and objectives. Lisa must embrace her role as a leader and recognize that the original passion that inspired her journey is worth defending. The path to reclaiming power is layered and challenging, but it is also immensely rewarding. Awareness of manipulation is the first step toward liberation. In the upcoming sections, we will explore practical strategies for asserting your autonomy, setting healthy boundaries, and rebuilding a strong sense of self. Understanding these tactics equips you to resist external influences, allowing you to take control of your narrative and pursue your goals with renewed vigor. The journey to reclaiming your power starts here, and recognizing these dynamics will empower you to shape your journey forward on your terms. The emotional impact of manipulative cycles is deep and pervasive, affecting individuals in myriad ways, including their decision-making, relationships, and self-esteem. Victims find themselves caught in a whirlwind of anxiety, self-doubt, and confusion that can distort their ability to perceive reality accurately. As Lisa navigates her relationship with Mark, she experiences dramatic fluctuations in her self-esteem. His continuous undermining comments and subtle redirects lead her to wonder if she is genuinely cut out for leadership. When every suggestion or idea feels met with skepticism, it becomes increasingly challenging for her to make confident decisions, creating a cycle where she second-guesses her instincts. Consider the case of Tom, another victim of a manipulative relationship. Tom was an aspiring musician who started collaborating with a more established artist, Rachel. At first, Rachel provided helpful feedback and support. However, as their partnership progressed, Rachel began to assert her opinions more forcefully, often stating that Tom's style was inferior or unmarketable. Gradually, Tom found himself altering his music to fit Rachel's mold, suppressing his creative instincts in a quest for validation. This manipulation not only affected Tom's music but also wore down his self-esteem, leading him to see himself as less worthy and capable. He began isolating from friends who encouraged him to express his authentic voice, believing their input lacked the expertise that Rachel possessed. The psychological toll of manipulation is well documented in research. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology indicates that individuals who endure persistent emotional manipulation experience significant drops in self-esteem and heightened feelings of hopelessness. This psychological fallout facilitates a cycle of compliance, where victims feel they must acquiesce to the manipulator's wishes. The desire to please becomes a driving force, clouding their judgment and leading them to accept extreme conditions for approval. Understanding why individuals fall victim to these manipulative dynamics is crucial in addressing the issue. Often, manipulators prey on insecurities or a strong need for validation. For example, Lisa might have initially seen Mark's critiques as valuable insights rather than the veiled attacks they were. This tendency to seek approval or fear rejection can blind victims to the red flags associated with their manipulator's behavior. As the cycle of manipulation continues, the victim's emotional landscape becomes fraught with uncertainty, causing them to cling to their abuser's perspective in an effort to maintain relational harmony. Awareness of these dynamics is critical for breaking free from the grip of manipulation. The realization that you are undervaluing your contributions and abilities can ignite a powerful desire for change. Victims must learn to trust their instincts and recognize signs of emotional exploitation. By fostering an environment where self-acknowledgement is prioritized over pleasing others, individuals can begin to challenge the narrative set by their manipulators. As we conclude this part of the chapter, we will prepare to explore the hidden warning signs of manipulation that often go unnoticed. Identifying these cues is essential for safeguarding oneself and beginning the journey to reclaiming personal power. The road ahead is about awareness and resilience, moving towards healthier relationships that respect individual autonomy. Understanding these psychological tactics will empower you to break free and reclaim your narrative. Your path to liberation starts with recognizing not only the signs of manipulation, but also the inherent worth that comes from trusting yourself and your capabilities. Manipulators are highly skilled at identifying their targets, employing keen observational skills and social awareness to pinpoint individuals who exhibit vulnerabilities. Often, they look for traits such as low self-esteem, a need for validation, or a strong desire for connection. This ability to read emotional cues enables manipulators to form relationships where control can be exercised easily. For instance, in a workplace setting, a manipulator may gravitate toward a colleague who seems eager to please, recognizing that their need for approval makes them susceptible to influence. Consider the case of Sarah, a talented graphic designer who, after joining a marketing agency, quickly develops a rapport with her supervisor, James. Initially, James plays the role of an encouraging mentor, showering Sarah with praise for her creativity. However, as their professional relationship deepens, he begins to leverage his position by critiquing her work harshly, often in front of other team members. "I'm not sure you're really capturing the brand's essence," he might say, casting doubt on Sarah's abilities. As these critiques accumulate, Sarah's confidence erodes. She starts missing opportunities to express her ideas in team meetings, fearing ridicule or dismissal, ultimately confining herself to a limited professional capacity. The psychological shifts that accompany manipulation are both profound and subtle. Initially, Sarah perceives James as a source of support, providing validation that fuels her creativity. However, over time, his criticisms create doubt, leading her to rely increasingly on his approval before taking any action. In moments of decision-making, she finds herself paralyzed, fearing failure more than she values her creative instincts, leading to feelings of inadequacy and frustration. This internal conflict is not unique to Sarah. Many individuals fall into similar patterns when faced with manipulative dynamics. Research in psychology highlights the detrimental effects of such manipulative tactics. A study published in the Journal of Interpersonal Violence notes that victims of emotional manipulation often experience a decline in self-worth and a heightened sense of anxiety. These emotional impacts can permeate various aspects of a victim's life, leading to isolation from friends and family, reducing their ability to rely on external support when they need it most. In Sarah's case, as confidence wanes, she might pull back from social engagements, believing that her work-related failures reflect poorly on her personal worth. The identification process of these targets often becomes a double-edged sword for manipulators. While they seek vulnerabilities, they also cultivate an environment that appears nurturing and supportive. By disguising exploitation behind a facade of mentorship or friendship, they minimize their victims' awareness of the negative shifts in perception. This tactical manipulation makes it exceedingly difficult for victims to recognize their entrapment until they are deeply entrenched in a cycle of compliance. Understanding these dynamics is essential for breaking free from manipulation. Recognizing that a manipulator intentionally cultivates emotional dependence allows victims to regain clarity regarding their values and boundaries. Awareness of manipulative tactics creates a mental framework that empowers individuals to challenge the narrative shaped by their manipulator. As this section concludes, it is crucial to maintain vigilance in recognizing these patterns. In the next part of the chapter, we will explore the escalation of control often observed in manipulative relationships. This exploration is vital for understanding how these psychological tactics develop over time, making it imperative for individuals to equip themselves with the knowledge necessary to reclaim their sense of autonomy. Awareness acts as the first line of defense against manipulation, heralding the opportunity for resilience and empowerment. Your journey to understanding and resisting these tactics continues here, laying the groundwork for healthier relationships built on mutual respect and self-worth. To break free from the clutches of dark psychological tactics, particularly those rooted in manipulation, a powerful counter-strategy is to cultivate self-awareness and establish firm boundaries. This process begins with recognizing your emotions and trusting your instincts. When you feel discomfort or confusion during interactions, those feelings are often your subconscious signaling that something is not right. Instead of dismissing these instincts, allow them to guide you. Acknowledge them as valid responses to manipulative behaviors, which often thrive in an environment of uncertainty. Establishing boundaries is a crucial step toward liberation. Clearly defining what you will and will not tolerate in your relationships creates an essential barrier against manipulation. For instance, if a colleague consistently undermines your contributions or dismisses your ideas, it is imperative to address these behaviors directly. Communication plays a vital role in this process. Assertively expressing how their actions impact you can empower you to reclaim your voice. An example could be saying, "I feel overlooked when my contributions are dismissed, and I want us to create an environment where all ideas are valued." This not only reinforces your self-worth, but also establishes a standard for how you expect to be treated. It's equally important to engage in reflective practices, such as journaling, to help clarify your thoughts and feelings. Documenting your daily interactions can reveal patterns of manipulation that may not be evident in the moment. This practice allows you to externalize your experiences, creating a space where you can objectively assess your emotions and the dynamics at play. Over time, you may begin to see clear examples of how manipulation operates within your relationships, empowering you to make informed decisions about how to respond. Developing a strong support system is another critical component of breaking free. Surround yourself with individuals who validate your feelings and encourage your independence. Friends, family, or mentors who respect your boundaries can help provide perspective and reinforce your sense of self-esteem. By fostering connections with supportive individuals, you create a counter-narrative to the manipulative tactics you may face, reminding you of your value and reinforcing your autonomy. As you practice these strategies, remember that reclaiming your power is an ongoing journey that requires perseverance. You may encounter setbacks, but each step you take toward establishing boundaries, trusting your instincts, and reinforcing your support system strengthens your resolve against manipulation. It's vital to remain committed to your personal growth and to maintain clarity in your relationships. Understanding these tactics enables you to recognize when manipulation is occurring and empowers you to respond effectively. Once you grasp the nuances of psychological manipulation and the importance of emotional clarity, you will never again find yourself ensnared in the same way. Each individual has the right to navigate relationships without sacrificing their identity or well-being. By integrating these strategies into your life, you are actively participating in the reclamation of your autonomy and the assertion of your self-worth. Your ability to recognize and resist manipulation translates into a powerful tool for fostering healthy relationships built on respect and mutual understanding. Empower yourself today to break free from manipulative cycles. You have the strength, the knowledge, and the determination needed to create a life that reflects your true self. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the intricate and often hidden world of psychological manipulation. In this book, we explored various tactics employed by manipulators, from gaslighting to emotional exploitation, and examined how they affect our emotions, decision-making, and relationships. We provided practical strategies for identifying and resisting these harmful behaviors, empowering you to reclaim your autonomy and self-worth. Armed with knowledge and awareness, you are now better prepared to recognize the signs of manipulation and set boundaries that safeguard your emotional well-being. Remember, understanding these tactics is the first crucial step toward protecting yourself from psychological harm. As you move forward, continue to trust your instincts and prioritize your mental health. If you found this content insightful, please like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to our channel for more empowering discussions on personal growth and self-defense against manipulation. Your engagement is invaluable in helping us create a community dedicated to awareness and resilience. Thank you for watching, and may you continue to foster healthier, more authentic relationships in your life.